there are only 10 laws that God gave, and man in the United States and around the world has complicated it. On top of Judaism, adding 631 rules and regulations to it, man has complicated with millions and millions and millions of pieces of legislation, all to try to control the behavior of man. And yet God gave us 10 laws very specifically that would draw man's attention directly to him and outward to other men. He only gave 10, and they're relatively simple. Everything else that you find in the books and the laws and all the law schools that you go to study and so forth, and there are volumes and volumes and volumes and millions of pages of legislation that's been written around the world, okay, all go toward trying to support, beef up, or to circumvent what God told us to do in the 10 Commandments. So let's look at this carefully in Exodus chapter.
Every generation passes truth and values to the next generation. And so in a very real sense, every generation becomes a guardian for the truth for the next generation. We live in a time, we live in a cultural setting, a Christian cultural setting, where men are not inclined to teach the truth. Churches are much more entertainment oriented. The Word of God and the teaching of the Word of God in the services is not the primary emphasis very often. Men are satisfied with very short lessons, if you would. Tell a lot of stories. Don't do a great deal of exposition and exegesis in the passages. So, once the truth is lost, once a generation loses the truth, it is not something that they can just quickly regain. It's very difficult at times to recover. And I think what we'll find, if historically we went back and we studied the history of the church, what we would find very clearly, very succinctly, is that once that truth was lost, that it cost people their lives to try and recover that truth.
It's imperative for us to understand these values and perspectives of God that should dominate not only our lives, our thinking, but also our practices. And that begins with understanding not only who Christ is, but understanding who we are because of who Jesus is and what He's done on our behalf. That seems to be a driving purpose in these first 3 chapters as the apostle writes. And so in these first 3 chapters we're going to be confronted with God's concept of who we are. It's really not that important what I think of myself or what you think about me or what others think about me. However, it's vitally important what God thinks about me, isn't it? And so to understand God's perspective and to bring God's perspective to bear upon my life is a crucial element